Howdy doodly neighbors. It's the generic villain here, coming at you once a year with this at this rate. Today, I'm going to do a review of fnaf World. Simply for my college. The reason why I call myself the generic villain and not by my actual name for my college's information is because I'll be posting this to YouTube and then to Wix. I have a small following on YouTube and I do not wish to dox myself, so I hope that's understandable to any and all viewers. That could be a bit loud, but I'll probably edit that out in post. Ooh, mysterious. fnaf World, back when it first came out, when it first came out on the 21st of January 2016, was made and published by the game's creator, Scott Cawthon. Not even just the games, the series creator, because he made 4 games before that, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 through 4. fnaf World, however, was a real pivot. We had gone from a night guard surviving the night to immediately changed into Freddy and the gang, roaming across this fantasy land and frolicking as we beat the crap out of random monsters. And again, not many people were too happy with that, but it's essentially an RP. They essentially went from a 2D horror side scroll a bit. It's its own genre in its own right, but it's an RPG designed for teenagers and younger audience, of which the fans at the time weren't too happy about, I'm afraid, of which unfortunately led to its delisting on Steam. However, it was kept up on Game Jolt. And the plot of the game, as far as I could tell, was to essentially go into the game, explore the realms and whatever, and try and get through by walking into glitchy pieces of shrubbery, or like a glitchy tombstone, for example, and then you get sent to a place called the Flip Side, where it would all be in like 2D, and it would be a lot like the fnaf secret minigames you could find, which was a really interesting concept where you'd have to walk around, try and get out to get to the next area so you can continue to explore and investigate. And that's the whole plot of it, really, up until you get to the point where you realize, oh crap, this is at the game's core where the problem is. And you have to defeat 4 bosses, which include Pig Patch, Pork Patch, variation of Mad Endo, Snowball, and Brow Boy. I believe that's the bosses, yes. Oh, and I think maybe Auto Chipper? I'm not too sure on that, but because that was mainly when I started playing a long time ago. But now, I'm continuing an old run in this video. Because you can see me start at World 4. I quite literally just got on it, saved, and never got back on the game. But for the sake of recording this review, I got back on. I went back and I played it. And I was running through it, and I quickly hit the head block when I realized, oh, this is why I turned the game off, and that's because the difficulty scaling is absolutely horrendous in the game. No offense, but you know, it's not. The difficulty scaling was pretty bad, but that's for a later. Bit. For now, what do I like about the game? As my next plot point, I like that the game is very well, it's not really that interactive, but I like how you can go around. It's a cutesy, fun rendition of what was FNAF, a very serious, very dark, and very gritty story about how children were murdered and etc., etc. And I just like the rendition that it plays now, where it's fun, cutesy, rebranding Freddy or whatever. It's honestly really addicting. Like, you go around, you fight bounce pots or colossals or mad endos or like just random pieces of garbage even sometimes. Like, you could fight 3 logs stacked on top of each other with a rat for a face. And that was really funny to me, and that's what I liked about the game, because it's its own quirky little thing. And that's what makes the game unique compared to the rest of the series. My next point here, is it addicting? Yes. Yes, it can be addicting, but that's a very difficult thing to really say, because it's addicting up until the point where you realize you've gone around in circles because you've had to grind up enough enemies to be able to defeat a boss. In which case you're like, oh, do I really have to do this? Do I really have to get through this kind of area? It's addicting up until the point. Up until that point. What is the game? And now my next point was, what is the game lacking? And I said, and I'm going to say this, it's lacking in a kind of normal skill progression, because the way that I played the game, and you can play it, you can tell through my playthrough, because I'll probably release the full playthrough on YouTube just after this review, is quite simple, really. I went through it, I was going through it, I hit a roadblock, and I was like, oh no. And that roadblocks in that game take forever to conquer, unfortunately. And you have to try and realize and say, maybe I need a little bit of help. It's like it's like the Trevor argument from GTA. Like, I kinda got a little angry. So, I went to an area where I managed to get secret characters by playing mini games, of which I was intending to do not just for the characters, but I was gonna do it anyway because I wanted you guys to see all that FNAF World had to offer, or most of what FNAF World had to offer. And so I went to the Halloween update, which introduced the deleted roster, which was quite fun. I did that. And after I did that, essentially, what happened? It trivialized the game, and that's kind of the game's downfall. You're either too strong or you're too weak. There's no in between. Moving on to the next bit. The aim of the game is essentially just try and get to the final boss. I got to the final boss, but because I was playing in normal, technically easy mode, the game proceeded to say nah and not let me play against the boss, which is kind of a downer, but it's also understandable. You want there to be something. You can't expect players to be on the easiest difficulty setting and immediately win. So I can understand why Scott did that, to gatekeep people out of the final boss area. And I just realized this is a major spoiler for the end of the video. But I'll play again, I'm going to be chopping these clips up anyway. It doesn't matter either way. And, you know, that's another drawback to the game. But the aim of the game essentially is to walk through, investigate Choppy's Woods, Lilygear Lake, the graveyard, Halloween graveyard, etc., etc. And, you know, it's essentially just investigate to the point of which you figure out where the source of all the glitchiness is and what's causing all these creatures to go wild and rampage, you know? And things you can do in the game. There's quite a lot of things you can do in the game. It's depending on whether you're going through the Halloween graveyard, which is update 2 and the deleted characters section, or if it's just update 1. So, update 1, again, you go around, you can go ahead and fight enemies. You can buy upgrades, you can buy chips, you can buy bytes, you can glitch into the upper level for some reason. I don't know what you call the upper level, quote unquote, but that's where I kind of walked into a tree stump and ended up above the game, grabbed a box, fought these weird glitchy figures, and then came back. That's like what I call the upper level. I still have no idea what that is, by the way. It's never explained. No one ever tells you how to do it, as far as I'm concerned. And again, the game, another drawback of the game, lack of direction, which I should point out now. It just tells you, you go here, you figure it out on yourself. And that's completely fine up until the point of which, oh dear God, figuring out myself may be a bad idea. So you have to try and do it. But you know, it is what it is. Again, you've got, I think I did mention fishing upgrades. In the Update 2 version, you've got the Update 2 mini-games for the characters. There's like Foxy's Fighters, Foxy.exe, Freddy in Space. By the way, fun fact, I never reached the final boss of Freddy in Space, but I've seen someone do it. It's quite literally the developer's head placed inside a jar as the final boss of Freddy in Space, which is really funny. That's the whole draw of FNAF World. It's meant to be really funny, really goofy, really silly. It was meant to be a release for Scott Cawthon, who had just been making horror games up until that point, and he wanted to return back to his roots. Because originally Scott Cawthon made the Chipper games, of which were meant to be fun, but were found out to be quite creepy, so he just decided to make horror games instead. The controls are simple, WASD, and then when you get into a fight, you just click the attack you want to use, and that's practically it. Of course, for the mini-games, there are some other different attacks and stuff, so like you use, so in Foxy.exe, you use the arrow keys for some reason, and in Freddy in Space, you'd use Z to jump, and X to shoot, something like that. Completely changed the controls for a mini game that was meant to be a spoof. Of which case made it, quite frankly, really bad for me to play the game because I could not do it. The visual, moving on to like the visual kind of structure of it. FNAF World, I was going to say Freddy in Space. FNAF World, quite simply put, is joyful, cheery, bubbly in its whole personality, and you'd have to really get that to understand what FNAF World is all about. I keep thinking Freddy in Space, it's stuck in my head. But FNAF World, again, is meant to be a giant spoof, where it's like, oh, you remember these horror characters you were fighting as you were an office guy, and it's Five Nights, woo. No, it completely changes it into, these horror characters are now cute little plushy things that you can use to fight enemies, and essentially by the end of the game you fight 3 bosses, of which again I never got to because I didn't do it, essentially. And you have 3 bosses. You have Scott Cawthon, you have Chipper's Revenge, which is, I think, is the second most powerful boss, or maybe the most powerful boss. And then you have the Cursed Rainbow. That rainbow is something. Yells obscenities in you in one of the deleted mini games in the Halloween graveyard. Spoilers. I never do that mini game in the game because I'd end up getting really angry and throwing my PC out the window. But you know, it is what it is. The art style of the game, I haven't seen a game have the same art style as FNAF World, because FNAF World was made in a backwater engine, essentially. But that is now, I don't know what's happened to that engine, I don't know what's going on with it. But FNAF World, it's got its own art style, it's very unique. It's more comparable to like chibi characters, I guess. If you made a chibi Freddy, that's FNAF World for you. But the art style, I can't really compare it to. And I think the graphics really back that up, because the graphics are what you'd see in a Flash game in 2017, and that adds to the charm of the game. It is quite literally designed to be. It is designed to look ass, like literal ass, and that's funny. It gives it quirkiness. It's not bad. The music design in the game has actually left an unmistakable imprint in, like, the FNAF fandom. That's how good the music was. That no other music track from any other game could practically beat it. The only game that could technically rival it was FNAF Security Breach, and even then, people still prefer the FNAF World soundtrack. It's very atmospheric at times. It can be very jolly. It can be very happy. I'll probably put a few clips up if I can get a few clips of the music, but you know, the sound of music is depending on like the track. Sometimes the sound of music can be like remixed versions from like FNAF 2 or 3, or it can be. There's no way to really compare it. It doesn't remind me of anything because it's the first time I really heard such a thing. If I heard a song like that, I'd go, oh, that sounds like FNAF World, because I'd immediately associate it with that, if that makes sense. And the atmosphere the game creates, it creates a really jolly and really festive atmosphere, up until the point you either go to the graveyard, the Halloween graveyard, or the flip side, in which case things... That didn't sound like a good enough snap. Neither did that. Like that. Immediately, it will just change into a deeply atmospheric, grungy kind of area where you can tell this is immediately bad. That's what the music really does. It immediately sends a signal, oh hey, this is not where I meant to hang out and that I should probably get moving as soon as possible. If music can do that just by the switch up, of which it does really well by the way, that is the sign of a good game. And FNAF World was a good game. I'm looking at my list of questions here, and I'm looking at what I've wrote. What do I think of the sound? Why? I think that the sound effects suit FNAF as a franchise as a whole, because that's what FNAF World was meant to do. It was meant to be the little cutesy game to hide all the horrible stuff that came before and after it. With a lot, and the same can be said for, the same can't be said for FNAF VR, because FNAF VR was poking fun at it, whereas FNAF World was using itself as a distraction for the rest of the FNAF series. Of which, again, props for storytelling and lore points and such. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. The game length is honestly about, oh god, it's about like 4 hours per game, because there is quite literally so much to do, and that's if you're speedrunning the game, mind you. When I recorded it, I was halfway through the game already, and when you have to speedrun the game, of course people can speedrun the game in like 12 minutes, don't get me wrong, but to really experience everything, it's like an 8-hour game per game, and there's like 6 endings. It's insanity. The variety honestly goes insane, because you can talk to Fredbear, and you can talk to so many characters. Well, not so many characters. You can talk to the shopkeepers, and you can have boss fights. Again, the variety is there for an RPG game. And honestly, despite the fact that I have just completed it, I'm honestly going to go through it again on hard mode. I'm probably going to have to go through Halloween bosses one more time, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to go back after I've completed it. Overall, FNAF World, despite its horrible textures, its storytelling being like decently good, and its lack of interactivity, it's one of my favorite games due to the sound design, the quirky graphics, the community behind it as well. Again, the game just lacking, and what it can improve on, essentially, is simply that it can... It's simply that it must be able to... it must be able to get down its power scale, essentially. It must be able to go through and essentially fix the power scaling issues. Because, again, you're either underpowered and you're overpowered. There's no in between. Future content to be added by DLC or in a sequel. Future content, quite literally the rest of the FNAF roster. FNAF World came out mid-FNAF series. Like, it is the 5th game in the franchise, and you have to think about that. That is the 5th game, which is impressive. And there's... how many games are in FNAF? Because you got 1, 2, 3, 4... FNAF World, Sister Location, Pizzeria Simulator, Ultimate Custom Night, Security Breach, Security Ruin, FNAF VR, and FNAF VR 2. That's 12 games, and it was the 5th game to come out. You'd have to understand that. So, quite literally, if Scott kept updating FNAF World, a roster of nearly all of the animatronics, because, like, if I want to go back to FNAF World, I could imagine myself playing as, like, Trash and the Gang, or as Mr. Hippo, or as some really obscure, like, Candy Cadet. I'd love to see Candy Cadet in FNAF World. It's charming. It's got its own charm. The game is there. If Scott kept updating it to follow along with the FNAF franchise, I would love that. But because it stopped, I don't mind. It's a great game overall, power scaling issues aside. And, yeah. This is the generic villain. Thank you for listening to my little rant on FNAF World and its design and such. Of course, this is not meant to be this long. This is like 20 minutes long, and I know my professor's not going to... well, not professor, my lecturer, as they like to be called. I do apologize. They're not going to really listen through to all of this. But what I do know is that I love the game, I love talking about it, and despite its flaws, it is an excellent game to pick up, even because it's free. It's a free game that you can get, like, thousands of hours of content from, and the modding community is out there as well, if you want even more out of the game. So, you know, just go out there, get the game off a Game Jolt, and just play it and experience it for yourself. And you'll see if my review has been biased or unbiased. This is the generic villain, signing off.